Jinwoo eventually came to the grim realization that the raid in Japan had failed. Meanwhile, Jinho's father was asleep in his office. When he finally woke up, his secretary approached him. Jinho's father asked how long he had been sleeping, to which the secretary replied, "You slept for 23 hours and 46 minutes. If you had slept any longer, we would have taken you to the hospital." The secretary then informed him of two important updates. The first piece of news was that one of the patients had awoken from the eternal sleep, and it turned out to be none other than Hunter Jinwoo's mother. Upon hearing this, Jinho's father was struck by the realization. Jinwoo may have the ability to cure eternal slumber. The second piece of news was that his daughter had come to visit him. As the girl entered the room, she began asking him how long he had been sick. Back in Japan, the situation had turned catastrophic. One of the colossal giants emerging from the gate grabbed Hunter Yuri Orloff and devoured him. Tanks on the ground opened fire on the giants, but the shells were useless. These monsters were simply too powerful for modern weaponry. The hunters on the ground quickly acknowledged the futility of relying on machines and ordered everyone to engage the giants directly. A group of hunters pounced on one of the monsters. The S-rank female hunter wielding katana flew into the air, realizing she needed to blind the giant by targeting its eyes. But the monster noticed it. With terrifying speed, it swung its massive axe. The hunters were shocked. For something so massive, it moved alarmingly fast, and it's pretty damn strong. Reporters aboard a helicopter were broadcasting live from Tokyo, describing the horrifying spectacle unfolding below. Jinwoo watched it all from his home on TV. To him, it looked like hell on earth. The entire world now waited with bated breath, hearts frozen, for the outcome of a battle where hunters were doing everything they could to stop the disaster. If things continued at this pace, there was a real chance that a catastrophe like the Jeju Island incident could happen again. This time, the whole Asia could be in danger. He began to wonder if he should intervene. But suddenly, he heard his sister's voice from behind the door.
"Don't go."
He turned and asked her, "What do you mean?" She replied quietly.
"You were about to leave."
Seeing the expression on her face, Jinwoo slowly rose from his chair and said, almost as if convincing himself, that he wasn't really going anywhere. So much had happened lately, and he was planning to rest for a while. As he walked past her, he gently stroked her head and told her, "Don't worry about it." A little later, Jinwoo sat alone on a bench in a nearby park and summoned Baru. Baru appeared instantly and greeted him.
"Yes, Your Majesty. No, I mean King."
Hearing this, Jinwoo raised an eyebrow and asked, "Are you watching dramas instead of guarding Jinah?" Baru's guilty expression was all the answer he needed. "How's Jinah doing?" Jinwoo asked.
"She doesn't do much except sleep, King."
Jinwoo sighed. He could tell the recent incident had affected her deeply. In the past 4 years, Jinah had never once tried to stop him from going on a raid, except for his very first one. He wondered what he should do next. Just then, a car pulled up near the park. Soon after, Jinwoo found himself seated across from CEO Yoo Myung-han. Jinwoo got straight to the point. "What business do you have with me?" Yoo Myung-han introduced himself properly. "I'm Yoo Myung-han, chairman of Eugene Construction." At that moment, he slid a check across the table toward Jinwoo. "I'm not someone who believes money can buy everything," he said, "and certainly not someone as powerful as an S-rank hunter. My intentions are sincere. I hope you understand that." Jinwoo could tell this conversation was meant to remain strictly between the two of them. From the way Yoo Myung-han spoke, it was clearly not about a guild invitation. "What is it that you want from me?" Jinwoo asked. The chairman sighed and answered, "I have the same illness your mother had." Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. "Does Jinho know about this?" "No," Yoo Myung-han replied. "Only 3 people do. My wife, my physician, and my secretary. And now, you." He continued, "We've been searching everywhere for a cure. And just when we were losing hope, we found someone, your mother, who was miraculously cured. I'm not sure if it was pure luck or something more, but I need to know the truth. If you help me, I will never forget your kindness." Jinwoo sat in silence for a moment. realizing that today he might have to make a choice. The battle in Japan was nothing short of monstrous. High above the chaos, reporters in a helicopter filmed the nightmare unfolding below. Their cameras captured scenes of towering giants tearing through the city, ripping out trees, smashing buildings, and trampling everything in their path. It was as if these creatures were intent on wiping out humanity itself. The horror deepened when they saw that the giants weren't just destroying, they were eating people. The carnage was almost too much to watch. Inside the helicopter, the crew remained frozen in shock, the only comfort being that they were in the air, untouchable for now. One of the reporters noted something strange. While most of the giants wreaked havoc across Tokyo, there was one that stood still near the gate. It wasn't attacking. Instead, it remained there like a sentinel, guarding the portal. The cameraman muttered, "Why is it just standing there?" "I don't know, but it looks wrong, like it's not really alive. It's breathing and moving, but it's not reacting to anything, like a machine moving according to its program." Another passenger scoffed. If it was that simple, it would have been blown apart by now. But even direct shelling hasn't phased it. So far, only 2 giants had been taken down, out of what looked like 30. "How long has it been since the dungeon break?" The cameraman replied, "About 2 days." The city was falling apart by the hour. Flames and smoke covered entire districts, and the military and hunters below were barely holding the line. With each minute that passed, Tokyo was being erased, turned to rubble under the weight of these impossible foes. No one knew how much longer they could contain them. But one thing was certain. The gate was still open, and something worse might still be waiting on the other side. At this time, Jinwoo was in his office talking to Jinho, telling him that he wanted to go to Japan, but Jinho was against it and started talking about how Jinwoo clearly didn't follow the news at all. What was happening there was even more horrifying than Jeju Island. He added that he had never fought such huge monsters before. Jinwoo replied that he understood, but if things worked out, their guild could gain a lot of recognition. He continued looking at Jinho, surprised that even someone who had always supported him was now doubting him. It showed just how serious the disaster really was. However, Jinho suddenly seemed to realize something and started saying that he would go with him. He brought up the Red Gate incident, the Jeju Island raid, and the double dungeon, then asked Jinwoo if he'd noticed something. Raising his hands, he showed a news article and began crying. He wasn't mentioned in any of them. He went on, saying that all he could brag about was working alongside Jinwoo, and though he was embarrassed to say it, but Jinwoo was his hero. Jinwoo, despite the emotional moment, didn't expect to hear that from a rich kid like Jinho. Jinho then told him that this was exactly why he wanted to help him, no matter where he went, and pleaded to be taken along. But Jinwoo began questioning him. After all, he'd just tried to talk him out of going, and now he wanted to join him. So Jinwoo asked him one last time, "Do you even remember exactly where we're going?" With a serious face, Jinho replied that he trusted Jinwoo, and if Jinwoo thought it was best, then it was. But Jinwoo stood up, turned to leave, and said he was joking, because really, what the hell did he care about Japan? Then he told Jinho to just go back home. But as soon as he left the office, Jinwoo reflected on the fact that he couldn't use his shadow soldiers while fighting Architect. The Architect had been around the same level as him, 100. So there were still beings in the world who could easily match his strength. After all, the world is a big place, and somewhere out there, someone may exist who could defeat him. It was time to accept that he couldn't solve every problem on his own, because he wasn't a hero. As soon as Jinwoo opened the door to his home, he called out that he was back. His mother, peeking around the corner, greeted him.
"You're home, son? You're having dinner, right?"
When they sat down at the table, he asked where his sister was, but his mother replied,
"She said she had no appetite."
While eating, Jinwoo began to recall what he had told Jinho's father, that he couldn't help him. When the man had asked him to at least explain how his mother was cured, Jinwoo had told him that if he actually knew, he wouldn't have kept it a secret. If he had wanted to profit from it, he would have done so long ago. After saying that, he turned and left. While descending in the elevator, something about it all bothered him. But still, he didn't really know the man. What kind of person was he? What was his goal? Maybe he wasn't even sick and was just plotting something. After all, the supply of the holy water of life was limited. He had to use it wisely. The offer had been unexpected, but it didn't interest him. Still, he realized that since he had to make a choice, he would make it now. Turning to his mom, he told her he'd be right back. Jinwoo understood that there were those stronger than him, but that didn't mean he should stop now. He had to go, and he had to fight those monsters. At that moment, as his mother stood washing the dishes, she said softly,
Your father used to eat quickly when someone needed him. I'll help you pack after you finish your food.
At this time, Jinwoo's sister overheard their conversation and couldn't hold back her tears. She covered her face with a blanket as she lay in her room. Suddenly, she heard the door open. Jinwoo walked in. He asked gently, "Are you asleep?" She only nodded in response. He offered to talk to her, but she refused, saying she just wanted to sleep. Ignoring that, he sat down beside her on the bed, unsure of how to begin. He finally started, "I almost died recently." But he quickly realized it was the wrong thing to say. After a pause, he tried again. "What I meant to say is, I've faced things like this before. It's common for me. But this time, I barely remember. It was that dangerous. Still, I survived. And I'm thankful. Despite everything, I was able to come home." He reached out, gently placed his hand on her head, and continued, "I'm grateful to have you. Grateful that you care, and that you tried to stop me this time. I'll come back again, just like I did now." But his sister couldn't hold back anymore. She began to cry and said, through her tears,
You were going anyway.
Jinwoo replied softly, "I am, but don't cry. I'll come back. I'll always look out for you, no matter where I am." The next day, the president of the Hunters Association held a press conference. It was announced that Sung Jin-Woo and the Ahjin Guild would assist Japan in their crisis. Later, at the nearest airport, Jinho was struggling with a large bag of equipment. He spotted Jinwoo standing nearby, scratching his head as he watched Jinho lug the oversized bag around. Realizing Jinho had packed way too much, Jinwoo helped him carry few things, and together they departed for Japan, prepared to confront the disaster ahead. In Japan, soldiers were desperately evacuating civilians. One of the soldiers rushed over to the doctors and told them they could only take 3 or 4 more wounded, but there were still 10 patients who couldn't move on their own. "This isn't the time to worry about people who already have one foot in the grave," the soldier argued. "The giants are everywhere. If we stay here, we're all dead." But one of the doctors refused to leave. His wife stood beside him, equally determined to protect the patients at all costs. Seeing this, the soldier paused, then said, "In that case, I'll stay too. I won't run. We'll shelter the wounded somewhere. Somehow." Suddenly, massive footsteps echoed through the streets. Giant figures emerged from behind a nearby building and charged toward them. The soldiers opened fire, but the bullets bounced off the monsters like dust. As a giant's hand reached toward them, the soldier instinctively shielded the doctors with his body, when, out of nowhere, a massive shadow slammed into the giant, sending it flying hundreds of meters away. It crashed into a distant block of buildings, reducing everything to rubble. The soldier looked up in disbelief. Standing where the giant once stood was a towering shadow soldier, easily matching the giants in size. Still stunned, he turned and saw a man calmly walking past him. It was Jinwoo. "It's dangerous here," the man said. "We need to draw the other giants away from the hospital." Just then, debris from a collapsing building hurtled toward the civilians. But Jinho arrived in time, blocking the rocks with his large shield. "I'll help with the evacuation," Jinho shouted. Hearing this, Jinwoo's expression turned cold as he released a chilling aura. "All right." His shadow soldier, Jinah, launched into action, charging the giants with brutal strength. As Jinah pinned one of them to the ground, Jinwoo dashed forward and leapt high into the air. With a single, powerful swing of his blade, he sliced the giant cleanly in half. At that time, the hunters in the eastern United States, gathered in a building, began to talk among themselves. Word had reached them that Jinwoo had gone to Japan. "I heard Lady Slener didn't even manage to upgrade a single stage of Hunter Sung Jin-Woo," one of them remarked. "He's going to die with that level." The others around the table chuckled and nodded. "Death's waiting for him in Tokyo," someone said. "Every one of us here got stronger thanks to Miss Slener. That guy doesn't even understand that a hunter has limits." One of the hunters leaned back and added mockingly, "Wasn't Jinwoo reawakened or something? He must be really proud of that power." They laughed. "He's so stubborn, thinking strength alone will carry him through. He has no idea what he's dealing with. Does he really believe ants and giants are the same thing? A hunter who overestimates his strength is destined to perish," another said. "How ironic, defeating an ant only to get squashed by a giant." They began placing bets. "I'll put my yacht on the line. He dies the first day," one smirked. "I bet my house he won't last too," said another. But before the third hunter could place his wager, the guild leader, Thomas Andre, interrupted.
"I'll bet the entire scavenger building that he survives."
The room went silent.
"You should be more focused on the S-rank gate that opened in our territory. The dungeon break is tomorrow. How many of us do you think will survive?"
One of the hunters muttered, "Man, he really knows how to kill the mood." Another snorted, "Give him a push. He's always been like this." Ignoring the chatter, the guild leader stared out the window and added quietly,
"Still, maybe I would have had more fun in Japan than here. Then again, tomorrow's going to be a hell of a time in its own way."
In Japan, the city was plunged into chaos as shadow soldiers clashed with enormous giants. Reporters in helicopters filmed the entire scene, otherwise no one would have believed it. Jinwoo's ant shadow soldiers had already subdued another giant and were now devouring it. Meanwhile, on the ground, a little girl was desperately running from one of the giants. Just as the monster reached out to grab her, a shadow appeared and sliced off the giant's hand. It was Igris. He saved the girl by catching her in his arms. At that very moment, another shadow appeared above the same giant. It was Iron. He flew down with all his might and slammed his axe into the giant's head. The force of the blow dropped the massive creature instantly. The girl, cradled in Igris's arms, was visibly terrified. Seeing this, Igris grew irritated at Iron's reckless behavior. Iron, however, just smiled cheerfully at the girl. Igris gently stroked her head, comforting her and assuring her she was safe now. Jinwoo, observing nearby, watched as Iron, especially after leveling up, was clearly enjoying himself and doing a good job. Suddenly, he noticed a soldier approaching him, filled with gratitude. The soldier tried to thank him, but Jinwoo simply gave him a big thumbs up and said, "You good, brave soldier." The soldier, a bit confused but moved, replied with a grateful, "Thank you, Hunter." Jinwoo then turned to Jinho and said, "Get this soldier out of here and finish the evacuation." Understanding immediately, Jinho stepped in and began leading the soldier away. Now that the area was secure, Jinwoo turned to the dead giant, ready to begin the real show. He raised his hand, preparing to turn the fallen giant into a shadow soldier. Arise. While Jinwoo was busy turning giants into his shadow soldiers, in a control room elsewhere, men were shouting that they were slowly retaking all the cities in Japan that had been overtaken by the giants. The chairman, however, couldn't understand how this was possible. Suddenly, when he glanced at one of the surveillance monitors, he realized something. Goto had been right. The look in Jinwoo's eyes back at the airport, it wasn't something ordinary. He had seen countless hunters before, but Jinwoo was on a completely different level. There was immense power behind his gaze. The chairman had greeted Jinwoo, the hunter who had come to help them. He quickly got to the point, explaining that the situation was urgent. The giants were now heading toward Osaka, and they wanted Jinwoo to take charge of the city's defense. His words were translated to Jinwoo, but the Japanese chairman, despite acknowledging Jinwoo's strength, still doubted that even he could stand up to all the giants. While Jinwoo held the line, they hoped to buy time to negotiate with other nations for help. To the chairman's surprise, Jinwoo replied, "No, I refuse." The chairman, stunned, asked, "In that case, what do you plan to do?" It was only then that the chairman fully grasped Jinwoo's intention. He was seriously planning to go up against all the giants alone. What Jinwoo was doing now, wasn't that the very thing they had initially asked of him? At that moment, Jinwoo stood before the massive giant he had just turned into a shadow soldier. Since there were several of them, and to avoid calling them by names, he began assigning numbers to them: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then General Baru approached him and reported that another enemy had been eliminated. "Then he'll be number 6, Jinwoo replied. Jinwoo thought to himself that he needed to build an army quickly. Turning to Jinho, who was standing near the tent, he told him to take a rest and assured him he'd be back soon. Things had been relatively easy so far, but the real challenge was just beginning. Across Japan, the shadow soldiers Jinwoo had dispatched were aiding hunters in taking down giants. It became a war of attrition. With Jinwoo's constant mana supply, the giants had no chance. His shadow soldiers healed immediately upon being defeated. However, a new problem arose: dungeon outbreaks. In addition to the giants, other monsters had begun appearing in the cities. Now, they had to manage both the evacuation of civilians and the defense against multiple types of monsters simultaneously. On the 7th day after the dungeon break, during the night, Jinwoo was walking along a road with Jinho. They talked about how the city was in ruins. Suddenly, they encountered a female hunter who remarked that they had finally arrived. Jinwoo asked her why he hadn't seen any other hunters around. She replied that, at this moment, there was no one else in Tokyo except for her, and it was currently impossible to even estimate the full extent of the city's damage. The monsters had already spread throughout the country. She explained that there were 16 S-rank hunters dispatched, including Jinwoo himself. 6 were Japanese, 2 were Chinese, 3 from Canada, 2 from India, and 1 each from England and Russia. 6 groups total, divided by guilds. Among the dead were Yuri Orlov from Russia, Hanja Gokui from the Evil Spirit Guild, and Lucas from Canada. This was the result of prolonged battles and the fact that the giants, though often acting alone, each possessed the power of an A-rank dungeon boss. Jinwoo realized that if 3 S-rank hunters had already died, then the deaths of A-rank and lower hunters weren't even being counted anymore. The huntress continued. There had been 31 giants total, and now one of them was heading across the sea toward China. There simply weren't enough people left to defend Japan. However, thanks to Jinwoo, most of the giants had already been wiped out, and the remaining ones were currently being handled by other hunters along with his shadow soldiers. Upon hearing this, Jinwoo realized that the only one left was the one right in front of them, the one guarding the gate. Suddenly, Jinwoo turned his eyes to the burning city. Something about the scene struck him. It felt strangely familiar. He thought that he had seen a place like this before, but couldn't remember where. A devastated city. It reminded him of the Demon Castle. If all of this had been orchestrated by the system, then what message had the architect intended to leave behind? After all, the architect was already dead and gone. Was his body even real in the first place? Even if this was all a clue about the future, Jinwoo realized that what mattered now was to prevent that future from ever coming true. That was the purpose of the power he had been given. He didn't want to tremble before an enemy he couldn't defeat. That's why he had always pursued greater strength. That's why he had come here. As Jinwoo finished his thoughts, he finally spoke aloud, saying that now that everyone had gathered, they could begin. The huntress tried to correct him, saying the other hunters hadn't arrived yet. To that, Jinwoo replied, "No, everyone already has." At that same moment, the hunters had just finished fighting the giants. The huntress, lying atop one of the fallen giants, sighed heavily. She was exhausted, and it was seriously pissing her off. Another hunter nearby told her that even if it was frustrating, she should be glad that it was finally over and try to think more positively. She knew he was right, but it didn't make her feel any better. After all, the Shadow soldiers had effortlessly taken care of the giants, ones they themselves couldn't even touch. Now the summons were leaving the cleanup work to the hunters, and that just made her angrier. She was genuinely pissed off at these summoned Shadow soldiers. Meanwhile, most of the Shadow soldiers began preparing for something even bigger. The huntress standing near Jinwoo noticed a large number of Shadow soldiers gathering around him, all of them poised for battle. The high-ranking Shadows knelt before Jinwoo, and then finally, the last one landed beside him. It was General Baru. Jinwoo turned to Baru and said, "You finally arrived. You did well." To this, Baru respectfully replied,
Thank you, my king.
Jinwoo then turned to Jinho and told him that he and Mrs. Hanakawa should move far away from here. As soon as they ran to the side, Jinwoo turned to the Shadow Giants, his newest and most powerful soldiers, and gave the command. "My shadows, charge!" Upon hearing Jinwoo's command, the battlefield erupted with the roars of the Shadow soldiers. They surged forward, an unstoppable tide of darkness, rushing toward the portal where the final, strongest giant stood guard. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers marched as one, their numbers so vast that half the city was cast into shadow under their presence. At that moment, the enormous giant, who had sat unmoving until now, began to stir. His fierce, glowing red eyes locked onto the incoming army. For the first time, he recognized a true threat. Slowly, he raised his massive greatsword and, with a single sweeping motion, cleaved through countless Shadow soldiers, obliterating them by the hundreds. In the blink of an eye, he charged forward, swinging with such force that the front lines of Jinwoo's army were flung back hundreds of meters. His blows were devastating, each one powerful enough to scatter dozens, even hundreds of soldiers like leaves in a storm. Watching from a distance, Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. This was no ordinary foe. The power radiating from the giant was overwhelming, enough to make even him instinctively want to flee. The immense, hideous magic energy pouring off the creature was almost unbearable, and Jinwoo felt an unpleasant feeling. How could something like this even exist? There were only two ways to deal with that feeling. One, run away, forget it, and move on. Or two, destroy it, here and now. And Jinwoo wasn't the kind to run. Even as the giant scattered his soldiers with every strike, the ant army swarmed around its feet, biting and clawing, trying to bring it down. But the giant noticed their assault, and with a grunt of irritation, he raised his massive foot and slammed it down again, sending the ants flying back hundreds of meters. General Baru, standing beside Jinwoo, was brimming with the urge to charge into battle against the terrifying giant. But as he prepared to leap forward, Jinwoo raised his hand to stop him. It wasn't time yet. Jinwoo still had enough mana and wanted to keep pressing the assault until he could find a weak spot. He stood still, focused, as his Shadow soldiers fought with everything they had, clashing against the towering monster. Yet Jinwoo quickly realized his mana was draining at an alarming rate. The magic radiating from the giant was overwhelming, like a fortress of iron surrounding it. That was why it didn't bother defending itself. That was where its confidence came from. But then Jinwoo noticed something. During the clash, the giant blocked one of the attacks. Just one. And it was in that instant Jinwoo knew. The giant did have a weakness. Without hesitation, Jinwoo summoned Kaisel, who soared into the air with a mighty screech. As Kaisel rose, Baru leapt off and launched a ferocious assault on the giant, striking with blinding speed and deadly precision. From above, Igris stood poised on Kaisel's back. His sword crackled with gathered lightning as he unleashed a devastating bolt down on the giant, but the monster reacted in time, deflecting the attack. That was when Jinwoo saw his chance. The giant began to swing its colossal sword toward Kaisel, but Igris had already moved. In a flash, he was on the giant's body, climbing up its frame. Igris struck once more, aiming a concentrated lightning blast at its face. The giant shielded its head with one massive hand, but that was exactly what Jinwoo had been waiting for. In a blur, Jinwoo appeared right in front of the giant's eye and drove his blade deep into it. The monster let out a deafening, blood-curdling scream. Jinwoo's hunch was correct. Its weakness was its face. With the giant reeling, Baru launched himself again. Jinwoo, seizing the moment, activated Ruler's authority and summoned a storm of blades, each one slamming into the giant's exposed face like meteors, unrelenting. Jinho stood beside the huntress, watching from a distance as the clash unfolded before their eyes. The ground trembled, the sky seemed darker, and the atmosphere itself was heavy with power. The huntress broke the silence, her voice filled with awe and fear. "This doesn't even look like a fight between a hunter and a monster," she muttered. "It's like two monsters going at each other." Jinho nodded in agreement, unable to find words. Jinwoo wasn't just fighting, he was dominating. Out on the battlefield, Jinwoo stood firm, his eyes fixed on the colossal giant, whose body writhed in agony. Each of Jinwoo's strikes had left deep gashes, and the giant was barely able to retaliate. Then, with a fierce determination in his eyes, Jinwoo summoned the power of his violet slash. In a blur of movement, he launched a relentless barrage of energy slashes, each one cutting through the air like a blade of pure death. With terrifying precision, Jinwoo's attacks landed, and one of them completely obliterated the giant's right eye. "Baru!" Jinwoo shouted. "Now!" Baru replied, voice filled with fury and loyalty.
As you command, my king.
He shot into the air like a bolt of black lightning and drove himself straight into the giant's wounded eye. The giant reeled back, thrashing and letting out a deafening roar as it raised its massive hands to its face, completely unprepared for this kind of attack. It was too late. In that exact moment, with unrelenting speed and deadly elegance, Jinwoo unleashed a storm of violent purple slashes, ripping into the giant's flesh, striking over and over again with incredible force. At the same time, Baru rampaged inside the giant's head, tearing through flesh and bone from within. Blood gushed from the giant's mouth. The huge giant collapsed to the ground in a kneeling posture, dead as a message appeared. "You have defeated the enemy." As soon as the enemy was defeated, Jinwoo's level instantly increased. Standing atop a building, he took a moment to reflect, yet something felt off. Jinho ran up, excitedly congratulating him for defeating the giant boss, calling him awesome. But Jinwoo couldn't shake a thought. The message hadn't said the dungeon boss was defeated. He couldn't extract the shadow of the fallen giant either, which confirmed it. This raid wasn't over. As Jinho came closer, Jinwoo instinctively stopped him. The danger hadn't passed, and something could happen at any moment. Suddenly, General Baru emerged from the giant's body and called out,
My king, it's me.
Jinwoo quickly realized it was indeed Baru, but what unsettled him was that even though the giant was dead, the lingering magic from its corpse rivaled Baru's own aura. At that moment, the gate in front of them began to react violently. A powerful wave of magic erupted from it. Jinwoo instinctively turned to check on Jinho and saw that Igris had already cloaked him in a protective shadow mantle. Then, in an instant, the giant's magic power was sucked into the gate, and a sharp, slicing pulse of magical energy cut across Jinwoo's side. He had never seen anything like it. Realizing this was no ordinary phenomenon, Jinwoo ordered Jinho to stay back and said, "I'll go inside and check what's going on." Jinwoo jumped into the gate and suddenly found himself on the other side. He realized he was in a strange, vast castle. Its enormous size made it perfect for giants. As he looked around, a sinister laugh echoed down the massive hallway. Baru, standing beside him, asked,
My king, did you hear that?
The laughter grew louder, deep, unsettling, and out of place. Jinwoo couldn't understand why someone would laugh like that when enemies were already in their dungeon. Without hesitation, he advanced. At the end of the corridor stood a huge giant, shackled but grinning with twisted delight. The giant shouted loudly,
"You contemptible rulers, look who has come to meet me. Welcome, Monarch. The chains, free me from these chains. I know what the rulers are planning. The other monarchs must be warned. Quickly! Wait, you are not the one I know."
Jinwoo, confused, asked, "Did the rulers, or whatever they're called, make you like this?" The giant replied,
"They are trying to use me as a foothold to strengthen their foundation for the real war."
Jinwoo recalled how every previous attempt to communicate with monsters failed. They never explained where they came from, so he asked, "What are the rulers?" The giant's expression turned grim.
"Ancient enemies of the Monarchs."
Jinwoo thought, "If they're enemies of the Monarchs, and I'm one of them, then they're also my enemies." He asked, "So if they chained you up like this, that must mean—"
"Yes, I too am a monarch, and all the monarchs and rulers likely have their eyes on you. As you are now, you do not possess the strength to face them all. You require support."
Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. "And you expect me to believe you'll help me?" The giant smiled.
"Then I shall make you believe me."
The giant spoke in an unknown language, and suddenly a system notification appeared. The king of giants, a monarch, is invoking the skill, Oath of Loyalty. If you accept, neither party will be capable of lying to the other. Without hesitation, Jinwoo accepted. The moment he did, the Pledge of Allegiance was sealed. The giant repeated,
"Release me, and I will help you."
Jinwoo tried to respond with doubt, but was immediately cut off. His voice froze mid-sentence.
"That's the power of the oath. It prevents you from lying."
Now completely certain the oath was binding, Jinwoo pressed further. "Why can you speak freely, unlike other monsters?" The king of giants furrowed his brow.
"Monsters? What monsters?"
"The ones that come out of the gates," Jinwoo clarified.
"Ah, you mean the Chaos Dwellers. But how could you even think to place mere denizens of the Chaos world on the same level as the monarchs who rule them? Those creatures, they're remnants of defeated armies, captured after losing to the armies of the rulers. They've been leashed for ages. It's no surprise their minds have decayed. But I am a king. I have retained my sanity. I have waited patiently for this fated day, when I could escape their grasp. And now, here we are, you and me."
Jinwoo then asked, "When you said armies of the rulers, do you mean the ones clad in silver armor, with wings on their backs?"
"Correct. They are the soldiers of the rulers."
Jinwoo's voice hardened. "Then why do those damn rulers keep sending those monsters, those creatures, at us?" The giant monarch replied,
"Like I said, they are preparing for war. They intend to transform this world into a battlefield, to clash with the monarchs once again."
Jinwoo asked, "I don't quite follow. Sending monsters just to turn Earth into a battlefield," the giant monarch answered.
"It's simple. It's all to inject magical energy into your world."
Jinwoo began to connect the pieces. If the monsters emerging from the gates were a disaster, then the release of magic itself was actually a good thing. Not only hunters, but even ordinary people had come to view soul crystals and mana stones as valuable sources of energy, pure magic. It turned out everything was for the sake of war. The giant monarch continued,
"There is no better way to propagate non-existent power. than by using the blood of those who possess power. So, the rulers decided to use their captives. With every day, the density of magical energy in your world grows. That is the fruit cultivated from the blood of the monsters. Magical energy empowers this world. Their plan is to create a world strong enough to withstand the devastation of war.
Jinwoo realized there would be a second war, a great conflict between the rulers and the monarchs. The Giant Monarch warned,
Soon, your world will become hell. There is no more time. Now that we've met, both the rulers and monarchs will act. Who knows? Perhaps the messenger of the rulers has already started to move.
Jinwoo, overwhelmed by the implications, asked, "But why me? Why am I their target?" The Giant Monarch looked at him and said,
You really don't know anything, do you? The power you possess, it isn't actually yours. The fact that you possess it proves that the original owner has betrayed the monarchs. You've now become an enemy to both the monarchs and the rulers. However, I swear, I will fight by your side. So, will you help me?
But Jinwoo began to tell him, "If you're going to be on my side, it'd be better if I just turned you into a shadow soldier." The Giant Monarch stared at Jinwoo. For a moment, he thought Jinwoo looked exactly like the Shadow Monarch himself. He replied,
Both monarchs and rulers possess spiritual bodies. When we are killed, our spiritual bodies are destroyed. That means we cannot be turned into shadows. So no, I cannot become your soldier. Is that enough reason for you to help me now?
Jinwoo finally understood the full picture, but something still didn't sit right with him. As he moved closer to the Giant Monarch, he said, "If I help you, will you take my side?" The Giant Monarch nodded and promised,
It will be a deal between monarchs. I will return the favor.
As Jinwoo prepared to cut the chains holding him, the Giant Monarch couldn't help but think, just for a moment, Jinwoo looked like Shadow Monarch. Was it just an illusion? Before cutting the last chain, Jinwoo paused. "Are you on humanity's side?" he asked. But the Giant Monarch fell silent. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. "Why aren't you answering? Is it because of the oath?" Then he noticed the behind the monarch's neck. As long as the stone exists, he will hear the words of the rulers, like every other monster, urging him to kill the humans. Suddenly, the monarch lashed out. Jinwoo quickly dodged the attack and said sharply, "Let's pretend this deal never happened. You're too dangerous to let live." Without hesitation, he drove his blade into the Giant Monarch. The monarch's eyes widened.
No, you're wrong. The calamity isn't me, it's you.
Before the ruler could strike again, Jinwoo moved faster, blitzing forward and slamming his fists into the monarch's gut with lightning speed. The giant stumbled and collapsed to the ground. Still gasping, he spoke.
As the battles between your world and the remnants of the Chaos world grow fiercer, your world will become a true battlefield. I hope everything you wish to protect burns in the fire of war.
But Jinwoo stared down coldly and replied, "That's not going to happen." With one swift motion, he cut off the Giant Monarch's head. A message appeared. "You have defeated the dungeon boss. You have defeated the Monarch of the Beginning, Regia, one of the 9 monarchs." Another notification followed, "Calculating EXP. Due to the large amount of EXP received, additional time may be required." Jinwoo understood. It made sense. It was the most experience he had ever gained at once. He was a bit disappointed he couldn't extract Regia's shadow, but he held a strange item in his hand. A trophy, perhaps. With the battle over, the Giant Monarch's body vanished. Jinwoo exited the dungeon. He had leveled up to 122. At that time, a helicopter descended onto the grounds of a luxurious estate. As soon as it landed, 2 figures stepped out. Inside the house, the owner, national-level hunter Christopher Reed, raised an eyebrow when he saw who it was. "I wasn't expecting visitors," Christopher said, surprised. Standing before him were the deputy director and Miss Slener. "We'd like to speak with you," the deputy director said. In private, Christopher glanced at his subordinates and gave a firm order. "No one is to come near this room until these two leave." A short while later, the three of them sat in a quiet room inside the mansion. Christopher leaned back in his chair and asked, "So, what brings you here? If it's about that S-rank dungeon that popped up in the east, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going." But Slener shook her head.
That's not why we've come. There's something more serious.
Christopher frowned. More serious than an S-rank dungeon? What could possibly be more dangerous than that?
Chris, you may be murdered in the near future.
Upon hearing Slener's words, Christopher slowly set his coffee cup on the table, his expression hardening. "I haven't forgotten what you did for me, and I'm grateful for it," he said, his voice calm but laced with irritation. "But we're not close enough for you to joke around like that." His tone quickly shifted to anger. Who is going to kill who? Slener remained composed and replied,
I had a dream, Christopher. In that dream, you were surrounded by several male figures, and then you were killed.
Christopher's face twisted with disbelief. "So you came all the way here to tell me this nonsense? Because of a dream?" He raised his voice. "Stop bullshitting me. I know what you're trying to do. Before your awakening, there were rumors about why your abilities are different from the rest. Maybe it's got something to do with your past as a psychic." Then he stood and declared, "I'm a national-level hunter. No one in this world can kill me." But Slener didn't back down.
I saw it clearly, Chris. Everything.
He scoffed. "Let's say, just for a second, I believe you. Then what? Am I supposed to beg someone for help?" He narrowed his eyes. "Do you really think there's anyone out there who can protect someone like me?" The silence lingered for a beat. Slener finally spoke, calm and firm.
There is one. Hunter Sung Jin-Woo.
Meanwhile, Jinwoo was emerging from the magic gate, his thoughts deep. He felt no regret for killing the Giant Monarch. Even while shackled, the monster had exuded a suffocating, oppressive aura. If it had ever been freed, the destruction would have been catastrophic. He had made the right call, but the encounter left him with a sobering realization. He needed to become even stronger. The news that all the giants had been exterminated spread rapidly across the globe. Social media erupted with discussion, and there was a growing movement proposing that hunter Sung Jin-Woo be recognized as a national-level hunter. Unlike the aftermath of the Jeju Island raid, it wasn't just Koreans making the call this time. Elsewhere, Liu Zhigang, China's strongest hunter, had defeated one of the giants attempting to cross the sea. In Japan, the head of the Hunter Association, Matsumoto, voluntarily turned himself into the authorities. It was unclear whether he was trying to take responsibility for what had happened across the globe, but the act drew attention nonetheless. Meanwhile, in Maryland, USA, American hunters who had recently completed a raid on an S-rank dungeon were celebrating at a lavish party hosted by the US government. The buffet was extravagant, no expense spared. As they drank and laughed, several hunters chatted about how the raid had been easier than expected. One said, "Honestly, I thought it would be way harder." Suddenly, the imposing figure of their guild leader, Thomas Andre, appeared.
So this is where you guys were hiding out.
He said with a smirk. Then, turning to each of them, he continued,
You bet your yacht, you bet your mansion. And you? What did you bet again?
One of the hunters stammered, "I didn't bet anything." Thomas grinned.
That's a nice necktie you've got.
The man tried to protest, but it was too late. Thomas took the tie anyway and walked off wearing it proudly. Later, he ran into his assistant. She frowned immediately. "That tie's really expensive, but it doesn't go with your Hawaiian shirt at all." Thomas paused, looked down, and then casually tossed the tie aside. His assistant's expression grew serious. "We've got more important things to worry about. The Hunter Bureau just released the list of guilds invited to the upcoming international conference. The Ahjin Guild is on it." A slow smile spread across his face.
So, Hunter Sung Jin-Woo will be coming to America.
At that moment in Japan, the giants-turned shadow soldiers stood in neat formation in front of Jinwoo, who was watching them silently. Aside from the one giant who had escaped into the sea, his army had grown significantly. The sight left nearby soldiers stunned. They couldn't believe such a terrifying ability to summon massive shadow creatures was real. Jinho, standing close by, noticed the wide-eyed expressions of the Japanese soldiers. It dawned on him again. Those who had never seen Jinwoo's full power were always left speechless. Sometimes, all it took was Jinwoo simply standing there for jaws to drop. Suddenly, a huntress approached Jinho, pulling him gently by the hand and showing him a phone. "It's for you," she said. He took the phone, and as soon as he heard the voice on the other end, his expression changed. "Jinwoo," Jinho said, voice tense. "I think I have to go back to Korea. I don't know the details yet, but something happened at home." A few minutes later, the huntress offered to escort him to the airport, and Jinho accepted. As the helicopter took off, his heart began pounding harder than ever before. He couldn't stop thinking about the trembling voice of his mother on the phone. What had happened? He didn't want to assume the worst, but a storm of worry kept building inside him. A short while later, at Incheon International Airport, Chairman Yu Myung-han's secretary approached Jinho. "The car is ready," the man said gently. "Please follow me. It's a difficult time. I ask that you remain calm. We'll explain everything on the way." Jinho, struggling to stay composed, asked, "What's going on? What happened to my father?" The secretary hesitated. "The chairman. He has entered the final sleep stage of eternal slumber disease." When Jinho saw his father at the hospital bed, his instincts kicked in and he lunged forward, but the secretary held him back. "You can't approach," the man said firmly. "Hunters who can't control their magic power will only worsen the condition if they are in proximity." Jinho lowered his head. "So I ended up being a useless son after all." The secretary stepped forward and handed him a book. "The chairman was working on this before falling into a coma. I kept it in case he might look for it when he woke up, but I think it's something you should have now." Jinho opened the book and froze. He murmured, "Like father, like son, huh?" He also has a habit of keeping news articles he likes. Inside were decades worth of newspaper clippings, articles about every competition and achievement of Jinho and his siblings. Even Jinho's most recent accomplishments were documented. The tears came without warning. "He never said it," Jinho whispered, eyes wet. "But he really loved me, didn't he?" The secretary nodded. His expectations were only high, because his love for you was that great. After some time, the secretary urged him to head home and get some rest. As Jinho turned to leave the ward, he paused, feeling like someone was near. He looked around but saw nothing, probably just his imagination. But it wasn't. Jinwoo had arrived. He had come not as a hunter, but as a friend, and he hated seeing Jinho cry. Silently, Jinwoo approached the chairman's bed. While the chairman was sleeping due to illness, he reached into his inventory and took out the elixir of life. Gently, he administered it to Chairman Yu Myung-han. Before the chairman woke, Jinwoo quietly left. As he exited the hospital, he passed Jinho's sister, who had just arrived. She noticed him but rushed past him into the ward. Inside, her breath caught in her throat. Her father was awake. Tears streamed down her face. The doctors were stunned, speechless. The man who had been in the final stage of sleeping sickness was sitting up, alert. It was a miracle, a medical impossibility. Outside, Jinwoo glanced up at the ward's glowing lights, a faint smile on his face. "It's a little early," he whispered, "but happy birthday, Jinho." It was his gift, a quiet act of friendship.